Robert Sanders, man, it's been a long time. I'm so glad we finally got you on the show. How are you doing?
Good, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, and I got to tell you, I don't know if it's the World Cup fever or what, but the main reason I wanted you to come on the show, I've been wanting to get you on the show for a while, like I was mentioning. I wouldn't say I'm hooked on soccer or football, whatever I'm supposed to be calling it. The same way I am, motorsports, obviously, or even American football or basketball, but I have been trying to keep up with it. I've got my Union shirt on right now. I'm excited for the start
Heck
of
yeah.
MLS season, especially with how good the Union have been the last few years. Hopefully, this might be the year they can finally break through and get over the final hurdle, win MLS Cup. But I know you've been a soccer fan for a long time. I want to get your thoughts and opinions on some of the things going on in the sport right now, and I also want you to help me learn some things because I know, I've been trying to watch these Premier League games. I still don't know all the teams and too many of the players and everything. Before we get into Chelsea, though, I guess we have to address there's something going on with the coaching staff of the U.S. men's national team, and I know Gio Reyna not getting a lot of playing time during the World Cup was a whole ordeal. So what's going on there?
It's a pretty interesting situation. I don't really know as much as probably some other people who are diehard fans of the U.S. men's national team know, but I do know that it was kind of like a weird whistleblower situation in the sense that, for lack of a better term, it was kind of like Gio Reyna's parents um, telling on Berhalter, who's our coach, because he didn't get much playing time. So there's a whole backstory to it, of Berhalter doing some things back when he was in college, that the Reina family, who knew Berhalter at the time, and Gio's father Claudio, um, played with Berhalter on the men's national team. They knew about, and so they told the men's national team governing body. So they're doing a full investigation right now. But it's a really interesting situation. I think it's kind of funny to kind of see that. It's kind of petty, if you ask me a little bit, just because I understand that Gio Reyna is a phenomenal player, and he just got back from injury when the World Cup happened. So there's a kind of a lot of ifs, ands, or buts that you can argue about. But it's a very interesting situation now in the men's national team for sure.
But we'll get into the men's national team a lot more as the show goes on, I'm sure. But like I said, I really want to touch on Chelsea because I know that's your favorite Premier League club, and I guess from what I've noticed, kind of following the table of the standings here, it seems like they're kind of middle of the pack, which I'm sure there are some clubs that were recently promoted that would love to be where Chelsea's at right now. But given Chelsea's rich history as one of the top Premier League teams with one of the largest fan bases and everything, I got to imagine most of you guys probably aren't too happy with this current situation that the club's in. So what's going on that has them further down the standings here?
I mean, it's a really open-ended question. There's a lot of different things that I could talk about, and I don't want to keep you here for a couple hours, but um, I'll try to do it in like 500 words or less. But basically, when Russia invaded Ukraine earlier in 2022, um, there was a lot of stuff going on in terms of our club owner, our former club owner, I should say now. His name was Roman Abramovich, and he's a Russian. And the Premier League thought it best, for a whole plethora of different reasons, as well as other things that will take too long to explain, that he should just leave the club. So the initial plan was to step aside from the club from his perspective and then leave everything to the board of trustees. But as things got going, he thought it would be best in order for him to just sell the club itself. So normally, when it comes to selling a club, it takes like 6 months at minimum to over 2 or 3 years. There's still clubs who are still in the process of being bought out, but Chelsea somehow did it in, I think, less than 60 days. So it's a really, really crazy turnaround. It's never been happened. It's never happened before. So there's a lot of change, a lot of turmoil during that time, um, in terms of what was going on, who was going to be the next owner. A lot of questions being asked, and still Chelsea had to play some really important games during that time span. So basically, Todd Bowley, who is a co-owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers, along with a consortium of, I think, close to 50 or 60 people, bought out Chelsea in May, I believe. and then started full ownership starting in late June. So it's been an interesting ride for sure. A lot of Chelsea fans are kind of just now starting to get back into things just because there was so much turmoil last year. But yeah, 10th place isn't the best. Actually, I think we're ninth now because Liverpool lost the other day. But yeah, ninth place isn't the best. We've spent a whole bunch of money too, to try to inject some youth and some creativity into the club, and it hasn't really panned out yet. So it's going to take some time. But I think the thing that all Chelsea fans are kind of looking for right now is a Champions League spot. So
What are your thoughts on Christian Pulisic? Because I know, being a more casual fan here of the U.S. national team, he's kind of been seen as the future of the, I guess you can't say franchise, but the team, our American soccer team here. I understand he's injured right now, and there have been, some complaints about how much playing time he's been getting. So what are your thoughts on his current situation with Chelsea?
yeah, I kind of feel bad for him to be completely honest with you. He came in the 2018 season, I believe, and he was raring to go. He didn't really start that much that year because we still had Eden Hazard on our team, but he played well. Didn't play that much. We had a lot of coaching changes during that time as well. But then in 2020, when the pandemic hit and the Premier League had just started back up again in July and August, he popped off. He had I think 5 or 6 goals for a 7 or 8 game span, which is crazy. A couple assists to add to that as well. So he was doing really really well. Afterwards and at the start of the new season, we were hoping that he would get some more starting time, but it kind of just fizzled out. He got a lot more injuries during the FA Cup final, which is um, the domestic cup in England, which we were in the final for. He scored, and then like 2 minutes later, he got injured. He wasn't the same afterwards. So he's been hit with the injury bug quite a bit at Chelsea, and now Chelsea just signed a whole bunch of players as well that are in his place. So I don't know if we'll get a lot of time for the rest of the season. It's looking more and more likely like he'll probably leave in the off season, which is kind of sad to see. But at the same time, I'm hoping that the new team that he plays for, whether it's in the Premier League or somewhere else in Europe, will be something that he can utilize to kind of revitalize his career again. So
Well, that's just what I was going to follow up with. Would you see him signing with another Premier League team, or would it be somewhere else in Europe? I don't know if he would come back to America to play in MLS at this stage in his career. Where do you think he'd end up?
I don't think he'll be in the MLS. Maybe somewhere in Italy. I can see him in Italy. I can see him in Germany. I can even see him in the Premier League. There's a couple teams. Manchester United were interested in for a while. Newcastle were interested in for a while. So it's going to be very interesting to see. From how much transfer money Chelsea wants to get out of him, and then second where he's willing to play because it's up to the player, of course, too. So I would assume somewhere in Europe for sure, in like a top 5 league.
So you and I went back and forth on this a little bit. Arsenal, I think, had a very exciting game within the last couple of weeks. I know they're on top of the standings right now, or at least last I checked. I understand you're not a huge Arsenal fan, which I guess makes sense. With you being a Chelsea fan, I understand they're pretty big rivals. Although you told me everybody hates Chelsea, right? Unless you're a
Yeah, a
Chelsea
lot
fan,
of
most people, yeah. Um, from what I think, Arsenal, it's been since like what 2004 since they've won the Premier League. So I feel like they've had a tumultuous last few years as well. Do you see them breaking through and holding at the top of the standings here, or do you think there are some other clubs that might have a chance to catch them here in the second half of the season?
Yeah, I think it's a three-way race right now. Arsenal, Man City, of course, and then Manchester United. Manchester United, under their new coach Eric Ten Hag, has been doing really, really well. He's built a really cohesive unit, done really well with the transfers inside and out of the club. Um, Arsenal right now, though, I think are the favorites to win it, and my personal pick as well. Um, Even though they had a little bit of a slip up by losing to Everton last week, I think they have a really really good shot of making it, just because of the coaching staff, their number 10, who is Martin Odegaard from Norway. He's player of the season for me so far. I just think they have a really good squad and a really cohesive unit to finish out the season pretty well.
Yeah, I saw that result earlier this week, and yeah, I know Everton from Tim Howard's days. Having played for them, but it looked like they're in the relegation zone right now, and to be able to beat Arsenal, who are on top of the standings. I guess was a pretty big upset. One thing that you reminded me of, I feel like I remember hearing a few years ago, Man City were in some sort of cheating scandal, maybe, not on the level of like the Houston Astros, but still a pretty serious situation. I feel like that was in the news again recently this week as well. So what's going on there?
Yeah, basically, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term financial fair play in soccer. Basically, to kind of sum it up, it was introduced in the 2011-2012 season, which is basically over a 3-year span, which UEFA is the governing body, looks over. They just want all the books to be at zero. They don't want any. They want the debits and credits to be settled. They don't want anybody in the red. When they did an internal audit, I think a couple of years before the financial fair play came into place, over half of the leagues that, or half the clubs that they looked at, which was like over 600, were in the red. And so they were like, well, maybe we should step back a little bit and kind of try to create a way in order to make everybody's debits and credits zero. Um, when that came into effect, Man City were just starting to get back into the swing of things in terms of winning the table again and getting back into a higher standard of being a top 6 club. So um, the first time that they were quote unquote punished was I think back in 2017 or 2018, where UEFA took a look at their finances and understood that they kind of fudged the numbers in order for them to make sure that those credits and debits equaled zero. So they got fined quite a bit of money. There was supposed to be a points deduction as well as potential for maybe them getting relegated without any type of argument whatsoever. But Manchester City hired the best lawyers, of course, and then went to the arbitration of sport, which is kind of like I believe, the Supreme Court for any sports cases. I think that's in Switzerland, and they won the case. So they only had to pay, I mean, I say only, but they had to pay quite a few $1 million, which is, all things considered, pretty good. Um, so the UEFA can only look back so far. I think it's a 5 or 6 year period, but the Premier League can look back more than 10 to 15 years from the current day. And so they just submitted a basically kind of a punishment to Man City. We haven't figured out what it's going to be yet, but it could be anything from more fines to more point deductions to even, again, relegation to the championship, which is the second tier. So it'll be really interesting to see. I don't think anything's going to really come out of it, just because Man City, again, knows how to handle this pretty well. But it'll be something to look out for.
So you follow me on social media. You know how I feel about playoffs in motorsports. One of the things that I think people sometimes compare, the situation in NASCAR to, in terms of not wanting a playoff system, is the Premier League doesn't have a playoff system, and that's a stick and ball sport, I guess, that you can sort of make a loose comparison to. But I want to get your perspective as a general sports fan, which I know you are. You follow all sorts of sports as well. Do you like the fact that there's no playoffs and it's just the best team during the regular season who has the most points is awarded a champion straight away, or would you want to see a 4-team or an 8-team playoff in some of these soccer leagues over in Europe?
I think in the Premier League specifically, which is what I follow the most, I like the way it is. I think it adds more pressure to it. In all honesty, I can understand how it might be more appealing, especially to an American audience who has been uh, with playoffs for basically all of their sports since the beginning of those sports existed. Um, to maybe get some more American fans in order to watch the Premier League. But I really like how it stands, just because if it's a really tight race, some people might, I don't know, draw a couple games or lose a couple games because they already know that they have a place in the playoffs. But the Premier League, in any single game, regardless of how many points away you are from first or second place, you always want to play your best. And that kind of brings the competitive edge that might not happen in some of the other sports that have those playoff games. So
Yeah, when it makes a nice, exciting championship battle, when it happens organically, I think that can be very special to
100%.
watch unfold. And yeah, like you said, every game matters and counts. And I feel like the whole point of crowning a champion in sports is to determine who the best was that year. I think there's no better system than to tally up who has the most points or who won the most games or whatever, and just say they're the champions. It's probably the fairest way to determine a champion that you can come up with. Now, I understand the argument, like you were saying, that obviously, if you have a playoff system, you have more games, you can sell more tickets, it can make more money for the league, it can generate more ratings because people know that those games count for more than just regular season games, and more people will watch and maybe get invested. But I think strictly from an integrity standpoint, I think it's the best way to determine a champion, and that's probably my favorite part of trying to learn this league and watch this league, knowing that whoever's on top at the end of the year, they're champions straight away, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a really it was kind of a weird transition for me just because following the NFL and following baseball and the Phillies and all that good stuff. It's weird not having a playoff background at all, but it kind of adds more excitement to it. So I completely understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect segue to soccer league. It does have a playoff system, and our Philadelphia Union, I guess I can say that, right? You're a Union fan on the MLS side of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, I watched MLS Cup. It was actually very perfect because it was on Fox. It was the lead into Game 6 of the World Series, and understanding, it was in Los Angeles, it was probably going to be an uphill battle. And I guess in complete fairness to LAFC, they had the lead for much of the game, and Philadelphia had to get a couple of equalizers there, and then briefly took the lead in extra time. Jack Elliott had a great go-ahead goal. And I got to tell you, I thought we were home free. I thought all we have to do is we're up a man. It's 11-on-10, and all the best defense and best goalkeeper in MLS has to do is keep them from scoring for 6 minutes, and they're MLS Cup champions. And then Gareth Bale marches down the field and
Yeah.
puts this immaculate header in the goal. And then I still thought we had a shot in penalties, but probably, I don't think I'm overstating this, the most heartbreaking moment of my lifetime as a Philly sports fan. It was just unbelievable how it all played out. What was going through your mind watching that game, and how close the Union came to winning MLS Cup?
Yeah, funny story about that actually. I was at a wedding during that time. So it was during the reception, and it was also when Cairn University, where I graduated from and where I work, uh, was having their playoff game as well, which is a championship game. So a couple of my friends were at the wedding as well. So I had the Union game on my phone, and then my other friends had all the Cairn game on their phone too. So we were not really paying attention to the wedding, which was sorry, but it was a pretty cool experience nonetheless. So it was a crazy game for sure. It was one of the weirdest games I've ever seen in the MLS side of things, and maybe even my time as a soccer fan. Like you said, Kellen Acosta, who had the first goal, horrific defending. It was off a free kick, I believe. So as someone who knew and as you know too, Philly had the best defense in all of the league last year. So it was pretty crazy to see how A, they let in 3 goals, B, how they let in a goal in the dying seconds of the game. Um, and they're a pretty good penalty taking team as well, and they waft all of those as well. So it was a very very interesting game. They lost. Karen lost that game too. So it was a pretty depressing day. But again, there was a wedding, so I couldn't really be too sad about it. But it was a crazy game nonetheless. That's for sure.
Yeah, and then the Phillies lost the World Series. I mean, you didn't even have to change the channel. It
Yeah.
was. I don't know if you're on Twitter. I think I've reposted it to Instagram as well. I've got this tweet up that is tracking Philadelphia Stars lose the USFL championship, which was on Fox. The Philadelphia Union lost MLS Cup, which was on Fox. The Philadelphia Phillies lost the World Series, which was on Fox. Then we got the Super Bowl coming up in a few days, which is on Fox again, and the Eagles are involved in that. So
Mm,
hopefully, fourth time is the charm here,
I
and
guess
yeah, we can avoid making even more history than we've already made, losing these sports championships. But yeah, I mean, I guess I have a funny story for that as well, because my uncle and my cousins moved over to England. He got a job transfer out there in 2010, I think. So, and he's a really big soccer fan as well. He's a Tottenham Hotspur fan. So that's kind of been my adopted team. I apologize because I know that they're big rivals with Chelsea as well. Um, but because he's a Spurs fan, he's mentioned Gareth Bale's name to me before. I know who Gareth Bale is, and I've always liked watching him play. He's been a fantastic player, had a fantastic career. And I was excited when he came to the United States because I knew he was a big name, and I think that helps, draw interest in the United States and Major League Soccer to have a name like him playing here.
Mm.
Um, so I've rooted for Tottenham, as certainly more a casual fan who just kind of checks in with the standings to see how my uncle's team is doing because he's from New York, so we're diametrically opposed in every other sport. He's a Yankees fan, Giants fan, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I figure the least I can do is, I mean, they're all across the ocean to me anyway, so it doesn't make much of a difference to me. So I figure the least I can do is root for his soccer team. Um, so with Gareth Bale's history over there, to see him come to Los Angeles and put a knife in my heart in MLS Cup was a very, very interesting experience. And then not even 3 weeks later, the U.S. plays Wales in their opening match of the World Cup,
Yeah.
and that's the only goal that that the U.S. gives up in open play was that penalty that Gareth Bale converted. So it's just unbelievable to me. Like one of the few soccer players that I knew of and actually rooted for a little bit ends up breaking our hearts twice in 3 weeks for both club and country. So
Yeah.
you can't script that stuff, man.
And now he's not even playing soccer anymore. He's a full-time
I
golfer.
know.
So
Yeah, he breaks my
yeah.
heart twice and then he leaves. He just retires, man. Like unbelievable. But yeah, but no, in all seriousness, from a neutral fan's perspective, obviously I was rooting for the Union. It was kind of heartbreaking how it all played out, but a fantastic game. I know some of the commentators were saying it was maybe the best MLS Cup ever, and then I think another one interjected and said maybe best MLS game ever, period. Thinking back to the whatever it is now, 26, 27-year history of the league. So I don't know. I think the future is bright. I know the Union have come close each of the last few years. I know they got decimated by COVID in 21 in the right before the Eastern Conference Final, and then 2020, I guess, won the Supporters Shield, which is at least something, a club trophy. But maybe this will finally be the year that they break through. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, they look pretty good this year. I think they've had 2 or 3 preseason games already, and I know that preseason's a completely different beast than the regular season, but they signed a couple good players. The GM of the team was really looking forward to signing a defender, a midfielder, and I think a forward, and he got all 3 of those. So I'm excited to see what the season's going to be for them. Plus, my friends have season tickets, so I only have to do like give them $5 via Venmo, and then I'm already in for the game. So I hope to go to a couple of those this year for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I saw something the other day. I think they said like undefeated preseason, and I'm thinking to myself, who else had an undefeated preseason? The 2008 Lions and the whatever it was 2016, 2017 Browns, the only two teams to go 0-16 in the regular NFL season. So again, I know it's not an exact science comparison because they're different sports, but the preseason certainly doesn't mean as much. But the team does look good this year, and like I said, hopefully this can maybe be the year where they break through.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
I kind of want a final. I want a Philly Cup win in Philadelphia. That's the ultimate dream.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can trade. I was just going back and doing some research. I guess there was the Philadelphia Atoms in the 70s back in the old North American Soccer League or something that I think won a championship in 73. So the city of Philadelphia does have a soccer championship. But if you look at the teams right now, if you count MLS, which I think they're trying to get MLS to be like to have a distinction as the 5th major North American sports league. Our Eagles got the Super Bowl 5 years ago. So the Union are still looking for their first pro championship. So like I said, maybe this will be the year. We'll just have to wait and see there. But I guess to segue, I know we touched on it a little bit, talking about Gareth Bale and Wales versus the United States, but a fantastic World Cup, I gotta say. Not just for the United States after missing it 4 years ago, but obviously the epic final that we got. What were some of your favorite moments from the World Cup just a couple of months ago?
Yeah, I mean, from the U.S. standpoint, Pulisic scoring a goal against Iran was crazy. It kind of solidified our spot in the round of 16 as well. So that was awesome to see. I watched that with my family, so that was pretty cool to bring us all together. I mean, you can't talk about the World Cup this year without talking about the France Argentina final, but I know we'll probably touch on that a little bit later. I'm sure. So, some of the other games that were really cool to watch were Saudi Arabia upsetting Argentina. That was a really cool one. I found out via social media after the game ended that the Prince of Saudi Arabia bought every single player on the Saudi Arabian team a Rolls Royce. That's kind of like a thank you.
Oh,
So that's pretty cool. um, but yeah, some of the dark horses that I thought were going to be dark horses kind of fluttered out, and some of the teams I didn't even think were going to make it out of the group stage made it to um, the quarterfinals. So it was really um, fun to watch. I think the Euros, which is kind of like the European World Cup, for lack of a better term, is one thing, but having all the South American teams and the Oceanic teams and even the Asian teams get together is a really cool and diverse unit. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I watched the game against Iran as well, and I don't know. I guess people sometimes when they try to discredit soccer, they say it's low scoring and boring. Like if you want to disprove that theory, like show them that 1-0 game against Iran. Because I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I literally when the final whistle sounded, I collapsed on the ground in tears. Like I know that's probably sounds so silly and ridiculous just to get out of the group stage, but after the failure to even make it in 2018 and how tense that second half was and how stressful it was, and all the stoppage time, I felt like there was like 8 minutes of stoppage time, 10 minutes of stoppage time in a lot of these games, which was kind of interesting, but that was an incredibly tense battle, and to hear the final whistle sound was just such a sense of relief. And I knew the U.S. probably wasn't gonna. I thought maybe they could upset the Netherlands. I don't think there's any way they would have beaten Argentina in the round of 8 if it had come to that. But um, it was, I think, unequivocally a success to get out of the group stage after the failure of 4 years ago. So I think there's a very solid foundation for the U.S. team to build upon. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because I know eventually the goal is to be able to do more than just get out of the group stage. But what do you think the future of the U.S. team looks like?
yeah, man. I know that we had either the youngest or the second youngest team in the World Cup this year, so that's an automatic foundational building block to kind of go off of. Of course, we have like Gio Reyna, and then Matt Turner, so our goalkeeper. When the rosters got announced, to be honest with you, I was a little bit confused with some of Berhalter's decisions, especially up top at striker. But even Haji Wright played pretty well. Josh Sargent played pretty well as well. So I think we have a very young team, and they are just kind of now getting into some of the top 5 leagues in Europe. So of course, Pulisic plays for Chelsea. Weston McKennie just moved to Leeds, where Tyler Adams and Brendan Harrison already are. So it's going to be a really interesting thing to see in the next 4 years where the where the men's national team is at. I think when it came to watching the games, our midfield was the most fun to watch, and then our fullbacks as well. So Anthony Robinson, who plays for Fulham, and then Serginho Dest, who plays for Barcelona, who now plays for AC Milan. They played out really, really well, and I'm excited to see how they grow over the next couple of years. And then, like I said, like Yunus Musa, who plays for Valencia, and then Adams, McKinney, Aronson. Very interested to see how they develop, and then, of course, become the next leaders for the 2026 World Cup.
Yeah, and Aronson's a bit of a local for us, right? Because he came up through Union
Yeah,
Academy. Yeah,
Medford Messi is what they call him.
nice. Yeah, man. Well, I guess before we touch on the final, probably the second best game of the World Cup, at least for my money, was the round of 8 between Argentina and the Netherlands. And again, I was fortunate enough to be able to watch that game live as it was unfolding. Um, what was it, 90 plus 11 when Netherlands got the equalizer there?
Yeah,
Um,
last minute.
yeah. What do you think of the back and forth in that game and the drive from Netherlands to come back and force extra time?
Yeah, I mean, in the first half, Argentina looks the better team. Of course, they had the goal or two advantage as well. So I kind of thought it was all and done with. Starting in the second half, I wasn't really paying attention that much. I was on my phone a lot, talking to my friends. Um, but then when Argentina scored the first goal, Wout Weghorst, who's scored both goals, who now plays for Manchester United, um, I became a lot more interested, and I was kind of like, well, Argentina's known to kind of give up some pretty big leads, so I was kind of watching the game more intently, and then once the last gasp header from Weghorst went in, I was kind of like, wow, this is going to be a game for the ages for sure. And then if you look back at the annals of World Cup history ever since it began, I know that Argentina and the Netherlands have never been the best of friends. They faced off in a lot of really important games, and I think Argentina overall had the upper hand in most of them. So that kind of added to the story even more. And then, of course, I don't know if you watched post penalty shootout, but all the Argentina players kind of ran over and did
Yeah,
some interesting things to the Netherlands
yeah,
faithful and players. So it was a really fun game to watch, that's for sure, especially from a neutral point of view.
yeah. Well, and again, who would have thought that it would be the second best match that we would have gotten? Because of course Argentina advanced through that. They beat I guess Argentina beat Croatia, and France beat Morocco, right? And that was how
Yep.
the final four, as it were, played out. And then the epic final with Messi and Mbappe, Argentina and France. I don't even know where to start with that game alone. Just the emotions of France trying to be the first country to repeat, and what was it, 60 years since Brazil did it, and then obviously
Mhm.
Messi's last chance at the one trophy that's been missing from his illustrious career. Um, take me through your thoughts as you were watching that match unfold, and I think it really played out a very similar way to the game Argentina had against the Netherlands, where they were up 2-0, and it looked like they were set, and all they had to do was run the clock out, and then France came storming back.
Yeah, again, a crazy game. I've been relishing watching a final that was high scoring, really really intense. I've been a Messi fan ever since I kind of began watching soccer. I know that that's the huge debate of Messi versus Ronaldo. So I was really hoping that he would win a World Cup to kind of solidify his status for me as the greatest of all time. Um, so that was kind of something that I was rooting for. A lot of my friends who I watched the game with as well were kind of in the same boat as me. So even though I was technically a neutral fan, I was really hoping that Argentina would win, and I think that kind of added on to the pressure even more. Um, I mean, if you think about it, Argentina had less experience than France did, but also France had a lot of injuries coming into the World Cup, so it was kind of an even match overall. But yeah, I mean, Messi's goal, Di Maria's goal, to kind of put them up 2-0, kind of I thought it was all but over. And then, like you said, France came storming back, went to extra time, went to 3-3. Mbappe had the game of his life in the second half. And then again, penalty shootout, which Montiel scored the last one, which solidified again, in my opinion, Messi being the GOAT. So, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better World Cup. And of course, right before Christmas, too. So it's kind of like a Christmas present.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I didn't make the connection until after the fact. I guess Lloris is the goalkeeper for France. I know he just had that,
Yep.
really embarrassing. I think they counted it as an own goal, actually. Just remember seeing that, and all the French
Uh,
fans were saying he didn't even try during the penalty shootout. He just completely quit on us. But
yeah.
yeah,
He announced his retirement from international football soon
uh,
afterward. So
yeah. Well, and then I think when Martinez made the save, um,
mm,
in that would have put France up 4-3. Um, I know the guys in the Fox booth were saying, like, remember that save, because France could have sealed it right then and there before they even got to penalties.
yeah,
So the game just had a little bit of everything, and then I guess I was with you, with the storyline of Messi. I wouldn't have been devastated if Argentina had lost, because like you said, we're really neutral fans in this whole deal, and obviously France was playing for a lot as well, but if I had to choose, I think I would have probably a little bit been pulling for Argentina as well, just because this being Messi's last chance, and everything he's been through throughout his entire career. Um, I think it was a very fitting ending to his, if not his international career, at least his World Cup career
yeah,
with Argentina. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I guess a nice segue. You kind of touched on it as well. Going back 4 years ago when the World Cup was in Russia, I think it was during the group stage. I think Ronaldo had maybe a hat trick in one game, and Argentina had a poor showing. And I think I put something on my story like it's official Ronaldo, and I think you actually responded to it and told me to take it back. I think I'd probably agree with you that it's Messi now at this point, knowing what everything I know about the game and uh, their history, and obviously Messi having the World Cup and Ronaldo not having it. I was actually hoping for an Argentina Portugal final because I think
A lot of
Messi
people were.
Ronaldo would have been a very intriguing matchup. But why do you think Messi is the greatest of all time? And what do you think besides the World Cup win that he just experienced? What do you think gives him the edge over Ronaldo and I guess maybe even guys like Maradona and Pele?
People argue this question all the time. I don't think there's a really distinct answer. I think especially now with LeBron breaking the points record, people are still going to debate whether or not he's the goat or Jordan's the goat. So it's something like that that kind of comes in with the soccer debate of Messi and Ronaldo. I mean, over their careers, Messi has less goals than Ronaldo, and even though he has more assists, I think that Messi is a more technically gifted player. I respect the crap out of Ronaldo in the sense that he had to work for his talent. Messi was just, in my opinion, more athletically gifted from the start. So I respect Ronaldo for that. But in Messi has less apps, or appearances, I should say. He has more assists than Ronaldo does. He has 20 or 30 less goals than Ronaldo does, and over 100 less apps, which is pretty mind blowing. Ronaldo started at the left wing, went to striker, as his career started to get up in years, and then Messi kind of transitioned from a center attacking mid to a right wing, back to a center attacking mid. I just think the way that Messi plays is a lot more beautiful in the sense of just how soccer, in my opinion, should be. Granted, I never played soccer. I just started watching it a couple years ago. But from my small brained mind, I really do think that Messi is the better, in my opinion.
I think the future of Messi and Ronaldo has been widely discussed, obviously, since the World Cup. And what I didn't realize, I know Messi's been linked to Miami for a while. I didn't realize, I think Kansas City had an offer on the table for Ronaldo that they may or may not have come close to signing him in actuality. But obviously, he's off with his new deal in Saudi Arabia, making literally hundreds of millions of dollars, I guess. Which I suppose you can get into the whole moral aspect of playing over there and the human rights issues and everything, but from a financial standpoint, I suppose it's hard to compete with that. What do you think the future holds for Lionel Messi? Because I've heard reports that he's been heavily linked to Miami and David Beckham's club here with MLS, but he's happy where he's at with PSG, and it sounded like he was going to re-up with PSG, but now maybe they're walking that back. What do you think his future holds?
Yeah, I mean, there's a soccer journalist who I follow. His name's Fabrizio Romano. He's kind of like the head honcho when it comes to all the transfer news and all the rumors that kind of come into fruition over time. And he came out with a statement, I think either today or yesterday, that the CEO, for lack of a better term, of PSG, were in talks with Messi currently in his camp in order to get a contract extension. I think that's going to be the deal. I think Messi's playing at too high of a level right now to go to the MLS. And again, take this with a grain of salt, but I don't think the MLS can quite yet compete with some of the top five leagues in Europe. So I think he still has too much left in the tank in order for him to. I don't think he should make that move just yet. I do know that he has a great relationship with Beckham. I know he has a house in Miami as well because, of course, he makes millions upon millions of dollars, and he needs somewhere to stay during the summer before preseason begins for every year. But I think for what it's worth, he'll get 1 or 2 more years, I think, in Europe before he moves to the MLS.
Well, that was kind of my, and again, I'm coming at it from a very casual fan's perspective. I'm still trying to, learn the ins and outs of the sport. But I guess when you talk about, either of them or both of them coming to America to play in Major League Soccer, I actually get it with Messi. I get wanting to, potentially re-up with PSG, or I think there have even been some rumors he could go back to Barcelona.
Mhm.
Spending a couple more years in Europe because he's a couple years younger than Ronaldo. He's obviously still playing at an exceptionally high level. I think he has a couple more years left in the tank where, if I think, obviously selfishly, I would love to have him in America, but, I think, the level that he's playing at, he certainly could, squeeze a couple more years out of his career over in Europe with, a top team over there in a league with, considered a little bit higher up there. Whereas with Ronaldo, obviously, like I said, I think he's 37, Messi's 35, so he's a couple of years older. really in the twilight of his career. You could even make the argument. I know Portugal were bringing him off the bench as a substitute in a couple of their games. I think some people were even saying Portugal looks better with him coming off
Mhm.
uh, the bench than they do with him in the starting 11. So I just think if Ronaldo wanted to follow the trends of, I guess, guys like Gareth Bale and Wayne Rooney, and maybe you could throw Beckham in there. I know Beckham was arguably still in his prime when he came to the Galaxy, but I guess there's the trend of players from Europe sort of coming to retire in Major League Soccer because it's a little bit lower stress of an environment, and they can kind of walk off into the sunset there. With how much of a fan base Ronaldo has, and I feel like he could have done a lot to help elevate Major League Soccer, even if it was with a team like Kansas City. And in the long run, maybe that would pay out, whether it's financially for him or in terms of following or whatever, as opposed to playing in Saudi Arabia, where I guess his haters are really mocking him and ridiculing him for taking a deal like that in a league like that. But I don't know. I think it was a much more. If I were in Ronaldo's shoes, I would be much more attracted to Major League Soccer. Whereas with Messi, I certainly understand wanting to spend a couple more years over in Europe.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation. I 100% agree with you with Messi. I still think he has quite a few years left in order for him to play at such a high level. And I do really see the attractiveness and the appeal of Ronaldo potentially coming to the MLS. But again, we don't really know what he was looking for. I know that Kansas City had put in a bid. It went through. His agents looked at it, but then I just think, I mean, $220 million per year, including all the promotions and everything that he would get paid salary rise. I mean, I understand how there might be a morality thing to it, but I mean, it's $220 million. So I can understand that appeal, and he's doing really well there. He scored 4 goals today in their win. So I mean, it's he's still playing at a level that is Ronaldo esque, but I think you put it pretty well that I think he's looking more at the twilight of his career than Messi is currently.
Yeah, no doubt. I saw that. I think with his 4 goals today, I'm saying today, it's going to take me a couple days to get this uploaded, obviously, but I think he's over 500 goals in club play. Is that correct?
Yeah, over
Yeah,
500 league goals.
yeah, which is quite an accomplishment, I'm sure. Well, on the subject of the future of soccer in America, obviously the World Cup comes to the United States. I know a couple of matches will be played in Canada and Mexico as well with this joint bid. But I guess that it really speaks to, like, we were talking a little bit about the future of the U.S. men's national team, and maybe there's still a chance Messi could come play Major League Soccer within the next couple of years, and to have a player like that playing in the United States would be huge. I just feel like I've been hearing for my entire lifetime that soccer is the fastest growing sport in America. Give it a few years, and the U.S. will be dominating the World Cup and everything like that. But I feel like right now it's different. Like, I'm actually, and maybe it's just because I'm actually buying into the hype and I'm trying to watch more of these games, but I actually feel like there's a strong sense of energy, surrounding U.S. soccer right now, that I think signifies a very bright future. Do you agree with that?
100%. Yeah, I think that the 2026 World Cup bid that we got was at probably one of the most opportune times for the culture of what soccer is becoming in the U.S. Um, I mean, there's going to be a game in Philly. There's going to be a couple games in Philly, a couple games at East Rutherford Stadium where the Giants and the Jets play. So I'm assuming, because I know that Christian Pulisic was a huge agent in order for getting a couple soccer games at the link, that maybe we can get a U.S. men's team um, game during the World Cup at Lincoln Financial Field. That would be a crazy game to watch. Um, but all things considered, I think that the way that the soccer culture is becoming, as of right now, as um, with how strong our team is, with how young our team is as well, and with the experience that they're bound to get more and more of over the next couple of years. I'm very excited to see um, what everything's going to look like in the next couple of years. And then who knows if we get a new coach, Jesse Marsh, who just got fired from Leeds, as American, and he kind of seems to a lot of the soccer commentators is kind of like the next big thing when it comes to head coaching for the men's national team. So if that comes into fruition, there's just a lot of I'm cautiously optimistic to put it in one or two words, just because I'm very excited to see what's coming ahead. But again, there can be a lot of pressure on this much hype. So
Yeah, well, I know our women's team in just a few months is going for a three-peat on the Women's World Cup side of things as well. So, there's certainly a lot of positive momentum surrounding this sport in the United States right now. And
mhm.
I'm with you. I want to try to find a way. And I don't think there's ever going to be a better opportunity to attend a World Cup match than there's going to be 3 years from now. So, I don't know where I'm going to be 3 years from now, if I'll still be in the area or what. But regardless of whether it's Philly or East Rutherford, like you were saying, or wherever, I think it's on my bucket list. I definitely got to get to at least one of those games when they come here.
100%. A couple of my friends and I are putting money aside because we already know the tickets are going to be so
Yeah.
expensive, but it's going to be so worth it.
Well, I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, talking about the future of the men's national team. Um, do you think there's any chance that the U.S. could make a run at the World Cup in 3 years, or do you think a more realistic goal would be get out of the group and maybe win one, maybe two knockout stage games in 26? Do you think winning the whole thing is a little bit too far out there, or do you think that you look at the player development and like you said, we had a really young team this year. You hire the right manager and get the coaching staff sorted out. Could we make a legitimate run at the World Cup?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation. I mean, there's a lot of turmoil, kind of like what we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, kind of like what's going on. If that gets figured out, or if there is transition, I just kind of want it to be under the bridge come time for the World Cup over the next couple of years. Um, Again, super young team. The problem for me currently is that they're actually expanding the amount of teams eligible for the World Cup in 2026. So I think it goes from 32 to 48. So it's going to be a lot more games, a lot higher stakes in terms of which teams are eligible, which teams aren't, and then how the bracket's going to work. So it might be four teams in a group, it might be three teams in a group. All that has yet to be decided, but I think the U.S. has a legitimate shot to get out of the group. I wouldn't put the expectations of them winning a World Cup just yet because there's still so many stalwarts that I don't think we can catch up to anytime soon, like France, Brazil, Germany, England, some of those big names. But I do think we have a legitimate shot of making out of the group, of course, and then winning a game or two for sure.
Well, I know it's certainly going to be very interesting to watch all that go down in just a few years. And I think, just to kind of sum it all up again, a lot of positive momentum surrounding the sport right now, and it's great to see because it's been I've wanted to get into soccer for a while, and it's kind of reminded me of Formula One's really booming in the United States right now, and I think of all the fans that were introduced to that, whether it was through the Netflix show or the TV deal with ESPN or whatever, maybe being a little bit more accessible than NBCSN was. But if you're trying to pick up Formula One, you got 10 teams and 20 drivers to learn. I feel like I've got 10 leagues to learn all around the world, trying to learn everything about the beautiful game, as it were. So I appreciate you spending some time with me this evening and talking over some things and giving your thoughts on the current state of the sport. And like I said, I think there's a lot of things to look forward to.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I gotta say though that you said it was your uncle who's a Tottenham fan. I would just
Yeah,
I don't know if he should be your uncle anymore. You should switch to Chelsea.
yeah.
You got to cut the Blues.
Well,
Tottenham hasn't they haven't won a trophy
yeah,
since ever, I think. So, I mean, join a club that won the Champions League 2 years ago.
yeah. Well, yeah. You're right. I mean, I am still looking for a club to support. I guess I don't know if I want one really though. Like I think it's a lot more fun when you don't care who wins and you're just watching as a neutral fan. So I don't know. Maybe I keep the mentality that they're all in England anyway. It's not like there's a local team that I have to pull for or anything. So I don't know. I love my uncle. He and I butt heads a lot of times over the Philly and New York thing, or
Yeah.
soccer versus basketball. Because I always used to make fun of soccer because he always made fun of basketball, and that's probably my favorite stick and ball sport, if you
Mm.
will. So we have an interesting relationship there. But yeah, certainly going to be watching and paying attention to how the whole Premier League standings play out. And unless you've got anything else you want to speak on here as we sign off, I'll let you get back to the rest of your evening. Otherwise.
I don't think so, man. Like I said, pleasure to do this. Good to hear from you and see you. But um, here's hoping that I become a Chelsea fan today. That's the last thing I'll say.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity to catch up, and let me know if you're in the area going to a Union game, this season, because I still have not been to Subaru Park, but certainly on my list of things to get done as
Yeah,
well. So I'd love to go to a game at some point if you're down for that.
yeah, you've never been before?
Never been. I've been to Sixers game and a couple of Phillies games this past year, but never been to an Eagles game at the Link, and never been to a Flyers game at Wells Fargo, and never been to a Union game. So those are still on my list.
Okay. Yeah, Union games are pretty fun to watch. You're super close to the pitch, so that's really fun. The energy is crazy. There's only like 6,500 seats in the whole stadium, but it's electric through and through because we're playing so well now. Um, Stadium gets more and more packed every game, so you'll be in for a treat for sure.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again, my man, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Ben.